everybody, and welcome back to Killer Bites. Today I'm going to be covering the case of Lisa Leanne Graham and making a peach cobbler. Everybody has an interesting relationship with their parents. Sometimes it's good, bad, or completely non-existent. But most of us, I would hope, wouldn't think to harm our families, even in the worst of situations. And there's the classic trope of wanting to make your parents proud. But some people never get the chance to do that. And today, I'm talking about Lisa Leanne Graham, a mother who hired a family friend to execute their daughter. Lisa Carpenter was born in Phoenix City, Alabama in 1967. Her mother got pregnant with her when she was just 17 years old. Sadly, the couple split up just before Lisa was born, and her dad didn't have any part of her life. But Lisa's mother said that she had a great childhood despite the lack of a father. When people described Phoenix City, they said it was just like an average mid-sized city with friendly people. It's on the smaller side, around a population of 30,000 people. When Lisa was 9 years old, she met her neighbor Kevin Graham for the first time. He was 11 years old, but they hung out all the time despite the little age gap. They were great friends throughout their childhood and would stay that way until high school. Eventually, Lisa would get fed up with just being friends, so they started dating. Kevin graduated high school and went on to take a job as a factory worker. Once Lisa graduated, they moved in together. Not long after, they tied the knot. Lisa had just turned 18 while Kevin was 21. First, we're gonna make the filling of the peach cobbler. Of course, we're gonna start with peaches. Into the peach mix, we're gonna mix in some brown sugar. And these two weren't wasting any time, okay? After they got married, they announced that they were expecting a child. And in February of 1997, Lisa would give birth to a baby girl named Shay, while Kevin started a new business building houses. Next, we're gonna put in some cinnamon. Shay was a really outgoing kid and super adventurous from the start. She was fun, playful, and a bit of a wild child. When she was 13 years old, Lisa got pregnant with her second child, Kevin Jr., and that made Shay a brand new big sister. At this time, the Grahams' business was taking off. Kevin was building a house every week. He was rising and grinding for his fam. While he did that, Lisa did all the office work and stayed home to take care of her baby boy, Kevin Jr. The two were extremely close. Meanwhile, Shay was out there racing cars at a local dirt track at 14. She didn't have a license, but apparently she was good at it. The crowd that came with this new hobby of hers weren't great influences, though. Shay had been in trouble with the law before, primarily for substance charges, and at one point had to go to juvenile court. But Shay didn't like the direction her life was headed in and wanted to make some changes. Her mom encouraged her to go to college, and in 2005, she ended up going. This was a stable period of Shay's life because she took a step back from her old crowd. You could see that this was improving her life for a short while. Sadly, old habits die hard, and she started hanging out with those people again and dropped out of college. Lisa hated Shay's friend group, and she was pretty justified in feeling that way, at least from a mother's perspective. She and her friends were involved in a drive-by shooting incident in 2006 where Shay was driving the car. She didn't have a weapon, but was obviously still arrested for this. She was held in jail, but her dad bailed her out. It was set at $100,000, by the way. Next, we're gonna add some lemon juice. Last but not least, we're gonna mix in some cornstarch. At this time, Shay worked as a dancer in one of the local strip joints. Lisa was just so frustrated with Shay. She hadn't seen her life panning out like this, and frankly, it seems like she was embarrassed by her. And that leads us to the night of July 5th, 2007. It was around midnight and the streets were practically dead. A truck driver was making his way to work when he noticed something on the dirt road. At first, he didn't think much of it. The area was known to have many deer that passed through. It's not unlikely that someone could have hit a deer and just drove away. But he turned back around because something felt off to him, and it's a good thing he did. He got out of the truck and walked towards the end of the road. Horrified, he realized it wasn't a deer, but it was a corpse of a young woman. He called 911 immediately and reported that he found a dead body on the side of a dirt road. Within minutes, the police arrived at the scene and started to look around. Initially, as they walked up to the body, they assumed it was a hit and run. The victim was partially on the dirt road and partially on the side, but as they got closer, they realized the injuries were far worse. The victim had multiple bullet wounds from a 9mm. There weren't any signs of a fight and no other injuries. Next, I'm gonna take this vegan butter and make it into small pieces before I put it in the flour. Her body had a significant tire mark that went across her back, meaning whoever did this attack ran her over with the truck and fled the scene. The cops noticed that her shirt was pulled up and her underwear had been pulled to her ankles. They started to think that this crime could have been sexually motivated, so they needed to identify the body to let the families know. Still, there wasn't any ID located on the body. The only thing they had to go off initially were a few tattoos. Now these pieces are all small, I'm gonna fork them into this flour. That evening, the Russell County Police Department got a phone call from Kevin and Lisa Graham. They were really worried about Shay. Her car wasn't in the driveway and she never came back home. The police were able to identify Shay through her record. Her fingerprints were already in the system from the substance charges and the drive-by she was a part of. Cops asked Lisa and Kevin to come down to the sheriff's department because they weren't able to break the awful news to them over the phone. When they heard the news, they were in total disbelief. The investigation begins, and Shay's friends are asked what she was doing the night of the attack. All of them said they were hanging out together when Shay got a call around 10 p.m. She told them she had some business to take care of. Her friend gave her a ride to the nearest gas station, and they waited for a guy in a truck to show up. And once Shay left, it would be the last time they saw her alive. The man Shay got into the car with was a 36-year-old dude named Kenneth Walton. Kenneth worked for the Graham family and was one of their close friends. But just 2 days before Shay was killed, Kevin fired him. This led to a massive blow-up outside their workplace, and it wasn't pretty. Now I'm gonna take this and put it in our bowl, and I'm gonna add the wet ingredients, which is some honey. So police head to the gas station Shay was last seen at to grab the footage from their CCTV cameras. Sure enough, Kenneth Walton was caught on video with Shay Graham. Even the phone records matched. Shay had been texting all the way up until the spot where her body was found. The pieces were falling into place. They brought Kenneth out to be questioned on July 7th, and he denied any involvement. He admitted that he was with her on the night that she passed away, but he said he left her alone. And the cops were like, dude, you're straight up capping right now. And they whip out the video evidence that shows him leaving with Shay. Despite this, Kenneth still denied it and even said that Shay never got into his truck. Last but not least, we're gonna add some oat milk. Finally, Kenneth broke down because you can only keep up that game for so long, right? And he tells investigators what he knows. A few weeks earlier, Shay had contacted Kenneth about getting a car. She needed one before a court date, and he was a close family friend who had a truck. They met up at the gas station because Kenneth lured her there with the promise of him having a car for her. Obviously, this wasn't the case. He drove her out to the dirt road and ended her life with a 9mm. And boom, just like that, they had their confession. Police continued to ask him questions and want to know why her underwear was pulled down and if he assaulted her. He denied that and said that Shay needed to use the bathroom and squatted down outside the truck. And while she was there, he took out the pistol and fired once. Then he walked around the car and fired into her body 3 more times. But there was way more to this story than just revenge killing. Kenneth told the police that Lisa, Shay's mother, hired him to end her daughter's life. Like, what? At this point, police weren't even looking in Lisa's direction. She wasn't even a tiny blip on their radar. And Kenneth goes and drops this bomb. So Kenneth spilled all the beans about Lisa and her horrible plan. The two had met up at a local library where Lisa told him her pistol was on the floorboard of her truck in the parking lot. He used it and returned it back to her. She was supposed to pay him, but they never specified how much. Now it's time to take this dough and bunch it up on top of the peach filling. Shay told Kenneth that she wasn't showing up to her court date and she wanted to get out of town. If she had the chance, this would have totally screwed over her parents, and they would have lost even more money than they already had. The bailout was a massive chunk of the couple's retirement fund, and now it was gone because of Shay. And so Lisa tells Kenneth to leave her body on the side of the road to be found. The cops want to know that this guy's for real. The guy had a record, so how could they know that he was telling the truth? Well, they had Kenneth call Lisa from inside the interrogation room, and she fell for the bait. She was chatting to him, talking about the weapon, about getting a lawyer, everything. That's when detectives got a warrant to search the Graham house. They knew that they were looking for a 9mm weapon, which both Lisa and Kevin owned. The safe and Lisa's car were searched, but it couldn't be found, and Lisa was playing dumb and said she had no idea where it could be. They look at Kevin and are like, all right, dude, if it's not here and not in her car, where the hell is it? Which is when a man called Papa was questioned. Papa said that Lisa dropped the firearm off at his house so he could clean it. Luckily, he hadn't gotten around to cleaning it, which meant that the fingerprints and evidence had still yet to be discovered. Police are shocked by what they're hearing. They needed to question Lisa immediately to get the truth. Lisa filled the cops in on her relationship with her daughter and her behavior. The entire time, she's talking about all the things she disliked about Shay. Her job as a stripper, her dropping out of college after 2 semesters, her substance problem. She made it clear that she was disappointed in her daughter and didn't know what else to do. But Kevin didn't feel the same way as his wife. Shay and Lisa would fight all the time, and whenever he would side with Shay, it would make her livid. She didn't think going to Kevin about this would be wise, which is why she hired Kenneth Walton. This is where Lisa started spinning the yarn about how she only asked Kenneth to go to the strip club to talk to Shay to steer her down a better path. Sure, Lisa. Sure. Let's put this bad boy in the oven. In return, she would help him with his problems, which was her reasoning for meeting up at the library hours before. According to Lisa, it was Kenneth's idea to go after Shay. He said he could get rid of her and solve all her problems. Then she flips the script and says, maybe she said it, maybe she didn't. How convenient. How the heck did Kenneth Walton have Lisa Graham's pistol? She lent it to him for business. Which, what kind of business do you need to take care of, ma'am? It's obvious that this chick knows that she's caught, but doesn't want to fess up. The evidence, the motive, it's all pointing directly at her. So they charge her with capital murder. In February 2015, the trial began after 8 years of delays and pushback. During that time, Lisa was out on $500,000 bond. People genuinely supported her, but Kevin did not. Apparently, Kenneth wasn't the first person Lisa had reached out to about harming her daughter. In fact, she'd reached out to a bunch of peeps and even offered money up front. This is how serious she was. That's when the Graham's neighbor took the stand and told the court about the incident that happened a couple months before Shay's passing. So, Shay is chasing her boyfriend around with a blade when their neighbor knocks on the door to let her parents know. While Kevin goes out to talk to Shay and get her to stop, Lisa looks at the neighbor and offers him $5,000 to execute Shay. The defense tried to argue that Kenneth was an executioner with a substantial criminal record and was just trying to throw Lisa under the bus to lessen his sentence. Their main reasoning was that no funds were ever transferred from Kenneth to Lisa. And while she might have wanted her daughter gone, like maybe she didn't mean it, this seems like such a weak defense to me. The jury started doing their thing and it took them hours to reach a verdict. They found her guilty and voted for the ultimate penalty. And Lisa was pissed. She's over here thinking she's got this in the bag, but the jury saw right through all of her BS. Lisa Graham is still on death row, waiting her final days. She filed a motion to have a retrial, but there haven't been any updates on that. And what's even crazier is that Kenneth Walton is eligible for parole in 2022. That guy didn't even get the ultimate penalty, even though he was the one that actually did it. What are your thoughts on this case? What do you think really happened? Is Kenneth just putting the blame on Lisa? Seems like Lisa wasn't joking, and she genuinely wanted someone to end her daughter's life. She was embarrassed and ashamed of her daughter and couldn't afford to keep bailing her out of trouble. So her last straw was having her killed. And finally, after asking multiple people, Kenneth agreed. And it was easy to deflect blame. And that is the tragic story of Shay Graham with a little bit of peach cobbler.